So, as you guys know right now, the Denver Nuggets have emerged victorious from this year's finals, ending a 47-year drought of 0 titles for the Nuggets franchise. And before Denver even clinched the championship, one false narrative that was slowly building that this Nuggets team faced no competition and had an easy road to the title. As what some fans are doing, they're purely looking at seeding for the teams Denver played. Minnesota being the 8th seed, Suns being the 4th seed, Lakers being the 7th seed, and of course Miami also being an 8th seed. And when it comes to prominent NBA media figures, you have someone like Chris Mannix saying this championship really wasn't that impressive and it was a weak run. And to give you guys some context, Chris Mannix picked against Denver versus the Suns as well as the Lakers, and after making the NBA Finals, said Denver simply wasn't interesting. With that in mind, let's hear Chris Mannix's argument for Denver not having a tough championship and for Jokic not having an all-time great postseason run.
Do you view Jokic's playoff run as all-time great? Or do you view it more as just like something more along the lines of like what Kawhi Leonard did in 2019, where it's like a legit finals MVP run, but no one's looking at him as like, the all-time greats, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't look at it as an all-time great playoff run because of kind of what you alluded to. They didn't have a peer really that they went up against, an equal.
So, stopping it right there, there's a lot to cover. As this guy with a straight face said this playoff run by Jokic was not an all-time great playoff run. And why he believes that is because Denver as a team, quote-unquote, didn't have a peer to go up against. Let's put that comment on the back burner and focus solely on Jokic and his all-time great playoff run. As Jokic in these playoffs averaged 30 points per game, 13.5 boards, 9.5 assists on 55, 46, and 80 splits. For Denver, he was a leader in every category except steals, and for the entire playoffs, led in points, rebounds, and assists. The only player in NBA history to accomplish that feat. Also some history he made for a playoff run all time. No player besides Jokic had 600 points, 150 boards, and 150 assists in a playoff run. And past that, looking at triple doubles, Jokic in this run had 10 total. The second place finisher is Wilt Chamberlain, who only had 7, and Magic Johnson, who had 6. And looking at all of NBA history, for career playoff triple doubles, Jokic in this run by himself, just one singular run, ranks 6th all time, tied with Larry Bird, Rajon Rondo, and Draymond Green. When it comes to all-time great stats in this run for Jokic, I could go on and on and on. For example, he's the only player in NBA history to average 30 points and shoot 45% from 3, make the finals, and win the championship. And for 19 straight games, scored 20 plus points, the 6th longest streak of all time, only behind Durant, LeBron, and MJ. Look, I've gone on long enough. I don't want to bore you with the stats and these mundane details. As what I want to get to is Chris Mannix's major point about Denver's run. As he very clearly said, Denver in this run didn't have a quote-unquote peer. And because of that, this championship isn't impressive and an all-time great run. Now, let's take one step back. When it comes to being dominant, this Nuggets team was exactly that. As in the playoffs, they went 16-4, and in the last 11 games, went 10-1. With that in mind, look at the 0-1 Lakers. They went 15-1 en route to the championship. Does that team being so dominant, not having a quote-unquote peer, diminish how great Shaq was, how great Kobe was, how great that team was as a collective? Obviously not. Look at the 91 Bulls, Jordan's first championship. They lost only 2 games en route to that title. Does that mean the Bulls and Jordan didn't have an all-time great run because they squashed the NBA's talent? Of course not. because MJ of the Year individually had a great run combined with team dominance. So the question I ask you guys, and even Chris Mannix, why is it different for Jokic and this Nuggets team?
Phoenix, as talented as they were, we all knew the flaws with that team, not the least of which was chemistry, of having only played a handful of games together before the playoffs started. I was as on board with the Lakers as anyone. I give the Nuggets credit for rolling through them in 4 straight, but they were certainly a flawed team. And now it's Miami. And I'm not going to dismiss Miami as just an 8 seed. Miami's better than that. But, it's not I'd probably feel differently about Jokic if he had gone through Boston or Milwaukee or in a matchup with Joel Embiid in Philadelphia.
Now, stopping it right there, hindsight is something to always admire, because even Stevie Wonder, with hindsight, has 20/20 vision. And everything this guy said was after the fact and after Denver beat Phoenix and Los Angeles. And like I said earlier, Chris Mannix picked Denver to lose both those series. And very important to highlight, I've said it over and over again, going into the Phoenix series, that team was rolling and 11-1 post the KD trade. And versus Denver, they were the favorites to win that series and the entire championship. This is a classic example of revisionist history and change in the narrative. As going into the series, don't pick Phoenix to win, and then when they lose, say Denver faced no competition or no quote-unquote peers. Even looking at the Lakers in the West Finals, going into that series, they were the hottest thing going. As a round prior, they beat the Warriors, and before that, destroyed the Grizzlies. And the media at the time was saying LeBron James had his deepest team, Anthony Davis, he was back, and their team defense was the best in the NBA. But after a sweep, 1, 2, 3, 4, all in a row, that narrative completely flipped. And now Chris Mannix is calling the Lakers a flawed team. And this guy with a straight face said he would have been more impressed in the finals if Jokic beat the Celtics, Bucks, or 76ers, and not the Heat. Think about that for a second. In the Eastern Conference, who beat Boston and Milwaukee? Think about it for a second. There had to be a team who beat both those teams. Oh yeah, that was the Heat who Jokic beat in the finals. And speaking of Philly, that team top to bottom was a laughingstock and a joke in the Eastern Conference. And even a year prior, that same Heat nucleus beat Philly in under 7 games. When you try oh so hard to downplay a team and a player, you twist yourself in knots and look absolutely foolish like Chris Mannix.
To get to that next level of superstar, that all-time great level of superstar, I want to see him go up against a team that is just, you consider they're equal, or even consider they're better, to beat someone that you're staring down and you're the underdog in that particular series by a sizable amount.
So stopping it right there, let me see if I'm following. Because the Nuggets and Jokic weren't down in a series, back against the wall, 100-1 underdogs, that makes this championship not as impressive. Jokic being so great, so dominant, not being down in a series is somehow a flaw for him and his team. Look, for NBA championships, not every ring is in the 2011 Mavericks, 2016 Cavs, or 95 Rockets. It's not going to be some underdog story for the ages every single finals. And once again, looking back at someone like Jordan, Shaq, and Kobe, in their final series for the most part, they were always the favorites, and not once massive underdogs. Does that take away from those players, their championships, and the rings they won? Absolutely not.
I've always said that, like, one of my favorite things about sports is when adversity forces an athlete to dig down to a level of greatness that even he didn't know was there. And as dominant as Jokic has been in this run, it has not been a run that's been full of adversity. So legitimate championship, probably one of the most unstoppable offensive playoff runs I've ever seen. In sheer, like, watching the TV, you're like, oh, there's literally nothing you could do with this guy, like that kind of thing.
And stopping that right there, at this point, I'm convinced a large majority of NBA fans view basketball in the NBA as the Bachelorette for men, as what these guys are more concerned and busy about is the narratives around the game and not the actual play itself. As listening to that clip, you heard buzzwords like adversity, back against the wall, and dig deep. Like, come on guys, what are we doing at this point? It's just basketball. You don't need narratives and these weird fantasy scenarios to enhance the game or the product on the court. Now, that right there is my final point, but I think this video is pretty important to set the narrative straight about Denver and Jokic. They were not the clear favorites in every single series. And the media, really all year long, until the finals, was picking against them in every matchup. So, as always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.